And I'm going to start off with a story that was sent to me earlier today, by our good friend Jim Graham, the mattress man. And at first, I looked at the story and got a chuckle at it. In fact, I laughed hysterically when I first read it. Happy birthday, Joe, by the way. And then, after a while, I started to look at this story more and more. And I started to get pretty sick about this. And it's pretty disturbing when you see and hear all the details. No surprise, it comes from the city of brotherly love in beautiful Philadelphia. It's wonderful, of course, when we get these great Philly stories that we can get a chance to bash the city of Philadelphia, because, as you know, we're not all too fond about the city of Philadelphia, especially when it comes to its sports teams. Well, here's what happened last night at the Phillies game. Guy and a couple of his buddies from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, are hanging out, and they went to the Philadelphia Phillies game. Okay, well, Chuck Nice will be an exception because he's a nice guy, but and no pun intended on that. But listen, for the most part, you know how Philadelphia fans are. Mattress Man, you know better than anybody too. And Saab, thank you very much. It's good to be live on Friday. Now, this group of kids, 21-year-olds, I shouldn't say kids, they go to the Phillies and St. Louis Cardinals game last night in in Philadelphia. And one of the guys who's at this game from Cherry Hill winds up getting kicked out of the game. And so his friend, who happened to stay behind, decides that he's going to do something pretty fucking disgusting. And this has spread like wildfire, this news. It's all over the national news. It was on the front page of MSNBC.com, CNN.com had it, FoxNews.com had it. The guy decides he's going to puke himself, and not just make himself puke, he's going to vomit all over an 11-year-old girl who was sitting next to him. So, according to to the father of the 11-year-old girl, he happens to be a police officer from a suburb city in Philadelphia. He puts his fingers down his throat, makes himself vomit, and he vomits all over this 11-year-old girl. I got to be honest with you. There are occasions where you look at what people in Philly do in their sporting arenas. They've booed Santa Claus. They've thrown snowballs at their own players. But this is just, I think Brendan just said it, it's just weird. Good God, what would cause a human being to make himself puke and then puke on an 11-year-old girl sitting next to him? Take a look at this story from Channel 3 in Philadelphia. It'll give you a little bit more of a background on the entire situation.
Just a little bit. But first, a lot of people are talking about this. Another blow is dealt to the reputation of Philadelphia sports fans.
Well, a family is the victim of unruly fans at a Phillies game. Matthew Clemens of Cherry Hill is charged with assault. He's accused of purposely vomiting on an 11-year-old girl and her father during Wednesday night's game at Citizens Bank Park. Investigators are saying that Clemens and his friends were sitting behind this family and harassed them for several innings.
And I couldn't believe what I saw. He actually had his fingers down his mouth and into his throat to make himself vomit. She was crying, and that's difficult to see as a dad.
Michael Vangelo says a fan caught a ball at the game and gave it to his daughter to make her experience a more positive one. Clemens also vomited on a police officer as he was being arrested. He's being held on $12,000 bail. Now, we wanted to find out how you felt about this. Let's check out our Talk Philly Facebook page. Now, Candace Henderson says, well, I can't blame the dad for hitting the man who purposely vomited on his child. That's disgusting and should be illegal. I hope he's punished at the highest level. I feel bad for that little girl. She is innocent.
And then Yolanda Nikki Warner says this, what? That was 100 times worse than spitting on someone. That person is sick and needs to be brought up on charges and banned from going to any more games. What a disgusting person. I agree with that banning idea.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Let's go one more. And Melissa says, disgusting also. Why would anyone do that on purpose? And if he did do that on purpose, they should pay dearly. Find at least $1,000 to be paid to the child and banned from sports arenas for life.
Yeah, if you're still interested in speaking out about this issue, you can go to our Facebook page, cbs3.com/talkphilly, and give us your comments.
So here's this guy, a disgusting specimen too. You saw his picture. He had one eye shut because apparently he'd been in some kind of fight. I mean, clearly he had been punched or was in some kind of melee at one point or another. Or maybe that came from the police officers as they were taking him out of Citizens Bank Park last night. I was listening to Philadelphia sports radio today because I wanted to get a little bit of an insight as to what was going on and what the feeling was down in Philly. And most people felt, and I kind of agree with them now, is that it's too bad that son of a bitch didn't have both of his eyes wired shut, because he's a disgusting, useless piece of shit. And it's pretty clear that this guy is just a complete low-life moron by picture alone. I know that's terrible. I can't believe I'm saying this because I don't like to judge on physical attributes. How about now? I think it should be back, right? Yeah. Well, because stupid Kevin knocked the mute button back. I'm fucking stupid. Okay, at any rate. What I was saying here. This guy is as low a form of life as you're going to find. And the fans of Philadelphia, who are rabid, okay, they are just as bad as fans as you're going to find in sports. I'm going to tell you a quick story real quick about 1996, and it was the one and only time I went to see the Devils play the Flyers in Philadelphia. It was at the old Spectrum, and the Devils had tied the game late and wound up winning the game in overtime. Okay, I'm with my buddy, and we're celebrating, having a great time because the Devils had just won the game in overtime. They were in a tough, tight playoff race back in 1996, and out of nowhere, I'm telling you, I get punched in the face, and I go flying into my friend who goes, and then the two of us go flying a row or two ahead of us. Now, not only did that happen, whoever the hell it was that we landed on then takes me and bear hugs me and won't let me go. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is great. Now, not only did he get punched, I'm going to wind up getting assaulted by some other drunk who I fell on because I got punched and went flying. Well, it turns out the guy was just trying to hold me because he didn't want me to get up and go running back and go back after the guy, which I wouldn't have done. I mean, listen, there's no sense in trying to argue or rationalize with anybody who was clearly as drunk as this lowlife was. But I tell the story because I have heard stories of complete and utter horror involving being a fan of an opposite team and going to Philadelphia and trying to root for your team. It's just not possible because the fans, in many, many regards, are vicious. And they know it. See, that's the funny part, is that they'll be the first ones to admit that they are vicious people and they don't like visitors coming into their territory, and that if you dare to do it, they're going to try and assault you and do something to make your stay in the stadium or at the Spectrum or at the Wachovia Center, wherever the hell it is, a miserable experience. But what I take, and having listened to 9:50 a.m. this afternoon, is that the fans are disgusted by the actions of this guy. They are disgusted that a fan would go so low as to puke himself and to puke on a young girl who was just simply sitting there, had nothing to do with the fact that this guy's friend got thrown out of the game. or anything of that nature. Just simply was there trying to enjoy a baseball game. Now, one of the overwhelming things that you keep hearing, and for the sports fans out there, you may agree or disagree with this, is that you will find those kind of things tend to happen in the 400, 500, and 600 levels of stadiums. But when you get into the single, double digits, and the 100 levels and the 200 levels, these kind of things don't happen because the tickets are more expensive. And you're liable to have more raucous fans sitting in the upper echelons of a stadium. I'm going to tell you what, that part I don't buy. I know it may be true, but it doesn't matter where you sit. You know, you don't deserve to have that kind of treatment. You don't. And I got to be honest with you, as a fan of the hockey team whose hat is sitting right in front of me, there have been many occasions where I have gone to games where fans of the opposing team were in the building, whether it's against Philadelphia, New York, Long Island, Boston, Pittsburgh. A lot of time these fans travel and come and watch a game in New Jersey. But guess what? By simply keeping your mouth shut and letting the game go on and letting the team go out, your team go out and win, it wouldn't matter who else is sitting in that arena because it shuts them up. And so I've always made the choice when I go to these types of games to just keep my mouth closed, not to bother with them, because most of the time they just want to see their team play a game. They're not there to cause trouble. Yes, there are times where there are people who do that and who do want to cause some serious trouble. But for the most part, coexisting inside an arena or a sporting event with fans of an opposing team is not a difficult task. But part of the reason that it gets so escalated and so difficult, and I'm not so sure if this were the case with this kid because nobody really said whether he was drinking or not. In fact, I heard that he may be a disturbed person who wasn't even drinking. But for the most part, the reason that these things happen is because people do not know how to control the consumption of alcoholic beverages when they go to sporting events. People just don't know when to say, I think I've had enough. Or even if they do know when they have had enough, or whether, or if they're getting close to towing the line of having too much. People behave differently in different circumstances when they're drinking. And that type of behavior gets very, very detrimental and very dangerous for young people especially. One of the guys on WPEN, the sports radio ESPN station in Philadelphia, called up and he said that he was down at an Eagles game a couple of years ago. He's a fan of the Eagles, but his son somehow is a fan of the Giants. And his kid was wearing a Giants jersey at the Eagles Giants game at that stadium, the football stadium down there. He said that his kid, 16 years old, got clocked in the back of the head with a glass bottle. For no other reason but because he was wearing a New York Giants jersey. Now, I'm not trying to make it seem like this stuff doesn't happen in New York or in New Jersey, because it does, and I don't want to make excuses that it's only Philadelphia where these types of things happen. But to a man, I think anybody who knows anything about sports will tell you, nowhere on earth is it more out of control than in the city of Philadelphia and at the events that take place at arenas and stadiums in the city of Philadelphia. It is out of control. And the suggestion was that that cow be suspended from and banned from ever going to a Philadelphia Phillies game ever again. That should be just the minimal punishment that he gets. I mean, he shouldn't be going to any sporting event. Phillies, Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, any of those. He should never be able to go to a sporting event again after that kind of behavior. But this guy needs to be prosecuted. He really needs to be prosecuted because, you know, I've always felt that I I think I'd rather, and I saw Saab put this in the chat room today. What would you rather, get punched in the face or get puked on? 100% I'd rather get punched in the face than puked on or spit upon by another human being. I don't know if there's anything lower you could do to another human being than just spit in their face or puke on them. And so that's why I really think this guy needs to get punished. And he needs to be punished very thoroughly. It's unbelievable. It's just unfathomable that these kind of things happen. And a young kid, 11 years old. I could understand if two people got into a fight with each other over something at a baseball game. It happens. There are times when people elbow you incorrectly or improperly when you're at a game, or somebody stands up and won't get the hell out of the way. Happens all the time. But it was an 11-year-old, and as Sab just said, it was a girl. A girl. And I don't care how drunk you are, you still know that even though you don't do things like that to another human being, you especially don't do it to a girl. So not only is this fat pig and slob a disgusting human being, he also did it to a girl. So something's severely wrong with him.